Tonight on the Fanatic Forum, we're going to dive deep into the world of horror comic books. What are some of your favorites? I'll share some of mine. We're going to do all of that right after this. Hey everybody, happy Friday and welcome to the Fanatic Forum. I'm your Fanatic and host, George Buehler. Hope everybody's having a good week out there so far and a TGIF out there, right? Anyway, if you guys have never tuned to the Fanatic Forum before, I'm your Prime Fanatic. As it says there, George Buehler. I am a super geek when it comes to many topics. I'm a comic book reader of over 40 years. I'm a movie geek, music geek, been a wrestling fan for many decades, video games, whatever, just general pop culture, all sorts of stuff. So that's why I'm here. I share my favorite things with you guys, topics to get you guys talking. And of course, I want to know what you guys think as well. Bring your favorites to the table, share your passions with me, all that good stuff. And of course, definitely share on whatever platform you're watching this or listening to on. But yeah, either way, thank you guys for joining us here. This is a place for geeks by geeks. Anywho, so tonight we're going to be delving into horror comic books. Now, of course, we've got stuff that dates back to like the '60s, late '60s, going into the '70s. After the, basically the clamp that the comic book industry put on themselves with the comic code, because in the early days, kind of going into maybe the 30s and the 40s a little bit, you had some great horror comic books that were just completely bonkers. Stuff like, Weird Tales and Black Cats and, all sorts of just, crazy golden age pre-code, as they call them, horror comic books. And of course, those things were, thought to be corrupting children and whatever else. So the comic book industry put a clamp on themselves by censoring things that basically, these books all did. Supernatural stories, demons, vampires, whatever the case may be. So no fun in the horror industry for, I don't know, almost 2 decades. And then basically they decide to kind of, take the restraints off a little bit. And so the late 60s going into the 70s, you start getting books like, House of Secrets, House of Mystery from DC Comics. And then, Marvel exploded in the 70s with like Ghost Rider, Tomb of Dracula, Son of Satan. So all these fun books. And then, of course, Marvel kind of peaked again in the 90s, bringing a lot of those horror characters back from the 70s. DC has always kind of had, a tenuous grasp on horror stuff until the 90s when they finally introduced the Vertigo line of stuff. Most of their horror was anthology books. They didn't really have any hardcore, mainstay characters. And then we get the Vertigo stuff. And then we get, reinventions on Swamp Thing. We get the Sandman and all that world of characters from Neil Gaiman. Tons of other horror stuff that came out from Vertigo. And so basically, we're getting kind of all sorts of cool and crazy stuff here. But then we get the independents. Of course, there always were independent comics, especially in the 70s and the 80s. Some groundbreaking stuff there. We saw a lot of the reprints of the old EC comics like Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. And let's see, I think Weird Fantasy was another one. Anywho, so true crime, lots of shocking tales, all those sorts of things. So we started seeing a resurgence of that stuff back. Of course, we had, things like Lady Death and Evil Ernie and Hellboy coming out of Dark Horse and, sort of things like that. But then now we've had this explosion of horror comics in the modern day. Coming out of DC, we get stuff that's, the general audience sort of thing, like Justice League Dark and John Constantine, but then or Zatanna as well. But then you get kind of stuff like Nice House on the Lake, which is sort of a little bit kind of almost get into the Vertigo sort of thing. But then also DC has their Black Label, which is their more modern, mature label sort of stuff like that. Vertigo is still around. You still have a lot of Sandman books that are coming out in those offshoots, but now, like I said, you're getting a little bit different thing. So yeah, just like I said, and Marvel, of course, they're doing a lot of different horror stuff, but the independents have just absolutely exploded. Image Comics, Boom Studios, Dark Horse again, Aftershock Comics. These are just some of the vaults, definitely. These are some of the mainstays in the independent comics industry when it comes to horror comics. And there's some fantastic stuff coming up, just blowing away the main level stuff here. So, yeah, just all awesome, really cool stuff here. Anywho, so let's see here. Of course, I did kind of pose the question earlier in the week, did get some excellent responses here. Of course, Diamond Dave Mattingly popping in here. Greetings, fanatics. Greetings to you, sir. We'll talk a little bit about Dave because next week we're going to have some fun in the, well, I don't normally do musicals, but if they're based on movies I really enjoy, then maybe we'll give it a chance here. But yeah, we're going to have some fun next week here. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But Dave chiming in, saying some of his favorite horror comics are Immortal Hulk. Absolutely. I never thought you'd actually do a comic book based on the Incredible Hulk that is a straight psychological horror, and also a lot of body horror kind of stuff too. There's some gruesome things in there as well. But Al Ewing just absolutely brought it. 50 issues of greatness. If you did not read the series, I highly recommend checking it out. Let's see here. Legion of Monsters. Yes, definitely from 2011. That's a fantastic series. And of course, Howling Commandos of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's a lot of fun. Actually, we'll kind of see a little bit of a comeback of the Howling Commandos because there is a Cap Wolf and the Howling Commandos miniseries coming out. I think next week is the first issue. So we'll probably see that pop up in my new comics reviews. So, yeah, I hope, at least I hope so. Let's see. Some other comments I got here. Herbert Geddes on the Horror Addicts group I'm with on Facebook. He loved the Vault of Horror EC Comics. Absolutely. Yeah, that's prime, spooky stuff right there. Absolutely love anywho, so I've got a lot of horror comics to share with you guys. There's some of my favorites, and definitely want you guys to share those as well if you have some favorites that we haven't mentioned on here. But I've got some new stuff I want to share with you guys first, so definitely want to do that. But of course, too, this week, I tell you what a time to be a fan, as my friend Joe Phillips would say, because we had the season finale of Ahsoka on Disney Plus. This is a hot week for Disney Plus. That was a fantastic series. It was a total homecoming for fans who watched the Rebels series and a little bit of Clone Wars thrown in there as well, but definitely a lot of Rebels. That was just wonderful seeing a lot of these characters get translated to live action personas. We finally have a Commander Thrawn live action persona now in the Star Wars universe. I'm very excited about that because he's one of my favorite villains. But then, we get, just some wonderful Jedi mysticism, kind of a little bit of piece missing of the Star Wars universe. We get that kind of back in hardcore with this first season. And from what I understand, people are expecting maybe a second season or whatever else. From what I understand, I think this is kind of a one and done series, but we're going to see a lot of the threads that were kind of left loose at the season finale for Ahsoka. Basically, those shows we'll see those repeats in some of the other series that'll be like, Mandalorian or whatever else is going to be coming out. But of course, there is still the as to be unnamed Dave Filoni Star Wars film project, which is kind of a culmination of all these series. So we're going to see a lot of coming together, big crossover, so to speak, of a lot of these series we've seen from Disney Plus based on the Star Wars universe kind of come to a big point there, kind of maybe getting us to the kind of the beginnings of the episode 7, 8, and 9, kind of, the beginnings of the First Order, perhaps, or whatever they're leading us to. But yeah, there's something big happening there. But yeah, very exciting stuff there. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen the finale yet. And of course, another thing I don't want to spoil: season premiere of Loki season 2. Last night, technically, officially today. But yeah, that was very exciting. Off to a great start there. And if you haven't seen it yet, again, don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't. We'll discuss later. But there is a bit of a post-credit scene. So if you want to kind of skip or you don't think there is one, you're not checking, there you go. Here's your, first episode. We get a good post-credit scene. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. But yes, we'll talk more about Loki later in a later episode. Dave, yeah, he also watched it. Once again, Loki is so good. Yes. Yeah, it's an absolute treat to see that show back. So, yeah, I'm excited for a lot more. And Ki-Hu Kwan is in the series this season, and such a welcome addition. Oh, I'm so glad he got back in acting. I'm so glad. Yeah. Anyway, all right, on with new comics here. First off, definitely want to talk a big one this week here because we got a couple solid independent books. But yeah, big one this week from Image Comics and Skybound here. This is Transformers #1. This, of course, is the really big, official kickoff to the Energon universe, which is a shared universe that will include the Transformers and G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. We're going to start seeing G.I. Joe books coming in November, starting with Larry Hama's return to G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, issue 301. Then in, I believe, December, we get Duke, which Josh Williamson's writing that series. And then in January, we get Cobra Commander, which Williamson's also doing that series as well. I think the Larry Hama series for Real American Hero will kind of continue what he was doing with the IDW series. He did leave us on a cliffhanger in issue 300. And so eventually he'll kind of, tie that all up and then eventually incorporate into the Energon universe. However, the Duke and the Cobra Commander series, respectively, are basically your entry points for G.I. Joe. If you've never read a G.I. Joe comic, if you just know Duke and Cobra by name, but you don't really know much about these characters, these are your entry points to those characters and how they are included in the Energon universe proper. But, of course, Transformers #1 here, definitely big part of that Energon universe here. Fantastic issue here, starting off. Just if you are the old school G1, Generation 1, 80s Transformers fan, you watch the cartoons, you had the toys, whatever else, this is the book for you, folks. This is a lot of stuff here. You get some familiar human characters. And then what I like about the series is you get kind of a small group of Autobots and a small group of Decepticons. It's not like the full cast right now. We've just got a few characters that have been stranded on Earth for a period of time. We don't know how long. And there are other Autobots and Decepticons still out in space, in the ether, possibly on Cybertron, whatever. But yeah, only basically a ragtag group of heroes or villains on, I think it's like 5 each, basically. But the writer on this one, Daniel Warren Johnson, who, of course, we know him from Do a Powerbomb, Wonder Woman Dead Earth, Justice League, or Jurassic League, I'm sorry. But yeah, he is the writer on this. And then, of course, he does the cover for the A book, A here, and then also does some of the interior art as well. And then Mike Spicer also does art and inking as well. And again, just total fun. Absolutely fun. Lots of variant covers available. Matter of fact, I got a couple myself here. Showing some of the cast, not all that we've seen in the first issue, but here's the collected Autobots group here. I love that nice little group of some old school. And, throw in RC as well. We got Wheeljack and Ratchet and Cliff Jumper. That's pretty cool. And then here's the collected group of Decepticons there. And really, like I said, technically, you only got 3 of the full-size ones there. You just got Starscream and Thundercracker and Soundwave, and then Soundwave's got Rumble and Laserbeak. But yeah, so yeah, just really cool stuff there. But yeah, highly recommend picking that up if you're any kind of Transformers fan. It's definitely a good nostalgia grab too if you're just a casual Transformers fan. But yeah, lots of fun. So and I'm looking very forward to what the series is going to go to next. Coming from Dark Horse, here's a good spooky book for you. The Midnight Show, written by the great Colin Bunn, which I love pretty much anything Colin does. He's a fantastic writer. Brian Hurt and Bill Crabtree are the main art team on this book here. The premise is that there is an unfinished Universal Monsters film that basically a fictional but well-known auteur did called The God of Monsters, and supposedly the set caught fire. The director was you know apparently he was thought missing, thought dead, died in the fire, whatever the case may be. And also, note is that the director was also the man behind the mask, so to speak, when it came to all of the monsters included in the film. Apparently, it was going to be like a big crossover of everybody showing up: Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy, Wolfman, the Creature, all that sort of stuff like that. It's a big crossover movie, and he was playing all the parts and directing the film as well. But again, this film was, thought lost or whatever else. And in modern day, we get a big public screening, first time screening here. But as the movie is playing in the real world, we start seeing kind of a blurring of the lines between reality and monster movie here. So by the end of this first issue here, there's definitely some problems going on. People are getting attacked. Weird things are happening. So looking forward to the rest of the series here. A nice fun take on that. I like it. Over from the big leagues here, we got a couple of Marvel and one DC to talk about here. But the one big Marvel one for this week here is the release of God's first issue here. This is the new Jonathan Hickman series. Art is being done by Valerio Schiti and Marta Gracia. Beautiful art here. Actually, I really enjoyed this series. Jonathan Hickman is an excellent writer, but as X-Men fan knows, recently he can get a little self-indulgent, a little long in the tooth, adding a whole lot of mythology to stuff and forcing X-Men fans to basically read about 15 to 20 different titles if you really want to get the whole story of everything going on. So sometimes he can get a little bit big and you kind of just need him to back off and just pare down, get some the important stuff, and hold off just a little bit, right? So when he is a little more controlled, not I don't want to say controlled, but what he's a little more subtle. You know, he's a very good storyteller when he gets a little more concise, doesn't add in too terribly much mythology, and that's kind of what we get with Gods here. This is a new entry point to new characters in both the mystical and the super science side of the Marvel Universe. So apparently, you've got two different factions. The powers that be, basically the mystical sort of things like that. That's where this lead character, his name is Wynn, and he's apparently about 1,000 years old and change. So interesting character there, but he has a very Doctor Strange sort of look here, but mood and actions a little more John Constantine. So he's a lot of fun. And then the science side are referred to as the natural order of things. And these are people that are like, if you were, are familiar with like factions like AIM in the Marvel Universe, Advanced Idea Mechanics, they're like the weird, crazy scientist stuff. And like, hey, let's see what this thing does, sort of things you shouldn't be experimenting on, but they do. The natural order of things is literally that plus 100. So, and they, again, super science sort of thing, very intelligent people, but yeah, they mess with humanity and, literally the natural order of things just to see what ticks, pique their curiosities, their experiments, whatever else. These are all characters and groups that are new to readers, but as they are posed in the Marvel Universe, characters like Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, Brother Voodoo, Reed Richards, all the super science, the magic people are aware of all these people. So it's a new experience for the readers. But yeah, so it's just interesting stuff here. I was very piqued and entertained. So apparently this is a 3-issue miniseries. And I will say the first issue here was $10, but it was a good read. So it's a large book. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a nice, fast read. So yeah, worth picking up if you're into definitely the magic, mystic, and weird science side for the Marvel Universe. Another really solid one here. Alien singular annual #1. This was an awesome book here. A silent issue for an Aliens book, which I'd never seen that before. You had all sorts of books, from Marvel, from Dark Horse Comics in the Alien universe, but yeah, never a silent issue. So I don't want to say too much about it because, again, just kind of spoil it. But yeah, solid book here. Declan Shalvey was the writer on this one, even though I guess it was still technically you needed a writer in this. Denny Earls and Ruth Redmond were the creative team on that one. But yeah, interesting stuff here. The new Ghost Rider annual for this year, of course, this is Benjamin Percy's his run on here. You brought back Parker Robbins the Hood. We have not seen this character in quite some time. The last time we did see him, he got sucked up in some kind of dark realm or whatever else. So he's been away from Earth in a different plane of existence for quite some time. So he's made his way back to Earth, trying to gain some objects of power to, increase his ability to also kind of permanently keep him on Earth, because apparently he's just here for a short visa from wherever he's been. And as we see in the book, also he's not quite 100% human anymore. Those eyes there are a little bit telling, but yeah, old Parker's a little changed a bit, but he's up to his old ways of trying to recruit low-level thugs and other super criminals to fall under his wing, do his bidding, that sort of thing like that. But of course, Ghost Rider comes in, also help out with his new wizard friend, Talia Warroad. Yeah, so a fun book. I enjoyed it. Definitely a great kind of, a little bit of a taste of what's kind of going on in Ghost Rider, but also a good self-contained one-shot story here. So yeah, definitely worth picking up. Oh yeah, actually, Dave. Yeah, the Hood did merge with. That's what it was. He merged with the Dark Force. Yeah. So yeah, he briefly came back. Maybe we haven't seen the last of him because he kind of did a little tease there. But yes, he's Parker is not quite the same young lad he was when he went into the Dark Force. So yes, he's a little different. Our last of our new books here, I definitely want to check this. You guys check this one out here. Batman 138. This is part 4 of the Gotham War. What has been going on is that since Batman has been very busy with a lot of big world events going on here, Dark Crisis, Lazarus Planet, Night Terrors, his own book, he had basically his own fail safe. If Batman went rogue and needed to be put down, he had a way to put it down. And basically, they had this like perfect robot. There was all sorts of. He was trapped in another universe for a little bit, lost a hand. Bruce has been through a lot of stuff. So while all that's been going on, Catwoman has decided that I'm going to recruit away all of the other bad guys in Gotham, all their henchmen, put them under my wing, train them properly, treat them properly, and everybody will work for me, and I will build a new criminal empire and make Gotham great. And how she's doing that, basically, it's cutting down on violent crime. People are going for, the bigger scores or whatever else, but they're doing less things to, you know, cause any sort of violent crime or property damage or anything along those lines. So her plan's kind of working. Unfortunately, now that Bruce is kind of caught up after he's done with all this stuff here, he doesn't like what's been going on. And so he's essentially said, to basically just Selena, look, you've got to stop what you're doing, or I'm going to put everything down, including you. However, the Bat family are in different camps. Some are agreeing with Catwoman, some are agreeing with Bruce. As we see here, Dick Grayson, the original Robin, now Nightwing, had a very big difference of opinion with Bruce on this one here, to the point where basically Nightwing was essentially trying to shut down all of Bruce's tech. There's essentially he's got a switch somewhere where basically you can literally turn it off, and all of his tech and resources are dead and gone, and so you kind of left him cold. Bruce also has got some very strained mental stuff going on right now, and so a mental failsafe he put in for himself, which he has dubbed Zur and R, which This dates back to Grant Morrison's run on Batman pre New 52. So we're talking like early 2000s. Which kind of was again a play on something that happened in the 1960s. But basically, have you ever seen Batman in the suit where basically it looks very patchworky and it's like purple and red and orange and green and multicolors, like Technicolor Batman? That's Zurin. That is Batman's mental failsafe, where basically he's kind of shut down or someone's taking over, and this is the way basically Bruce can take himself back. So it's like another personality, but Bruce created it on purpose. It wasn't built out of trauma, it was built out of some sort of discipline or whatever the case may be there. But yeah, it was very interesting. Nonetheless, Bruce's mental strain has caused him to be a little bit more brutal and kind of disgusting towards some of his Bat family members, especially Jason Todd, unfortunately. So that's kind of, again, what caused a lot of the conflict between he and Grayson. Excuse me. So that's kind of where we are in here. So we get kind of a very brutal confrontation between Bruce and Grayson. On the other hand, there's what things been going on with some of Catwoman's secondary, I guess, lieutenants within her new family. Apparently, they have other plans going on, secret sort of thing like that involve a new League of Shadows being run by Vandal Savage. Vandal Savage, if you aren't aware, is a longtime DC villain for the Justice League, for just about anybody in the DC universe. He is immortal. He was originally a caveman who essentially found a meteorite, very similar to the Lazarus pits that keep Ra's al Ghul alive and sunny and smiling, whatever else. And so basically, he's been alive for literally millions of years and experienced all sorts of things. He is a conqueror. He is a great warrior. He's also a very cunning sort of strategist, whatever else. So yeah, Vandal is a handle. it's hard to handle, I should say. And apparently, he has a daughter, and this daughter has been working for Selena Kyle this whole time, and secretly helping her build this army so she can essentially hand it right off to her dad. So that's where we are. Very interesting period here. So a nice twist to this Gotham War. We got everybody all distracted with things going on here, and literally there's being an army built right under their noses. So yeah, interesting stuff here. Dave Manley chiming in saying he likes the Joker-Penguin rivalry in Gotham War. Yes, of course, we could see more of that in Joker's own title, kind of going on in The Man Who Stopped Laughing. Also, interestingly, going on in the background, too, all the other kind of rogues gallery of Batman Gotham villains, they're all like, okay, well, look, we don't have any henchmen anymore, and Catwoman's taking all of our people, but we can all get together and have a group of people. And so, yeah, there are some personalities like Joker and Penguin that, they're not quite 100% getting along because they have two completely different ways of running things here. So, and they both want to be in charge. So that's Penguin, I would rather have in charge than Joker because we all know Joker is just pure chaos. So, yeah, I like that stuff too, Dave. It's fun. All right, we're going to take a brief break here to acknowledge our sponsor, Comic Books for Kids. Then when we get back, I want to share some spooky books with you guys here. So we'll be right back.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals. Every month, we add more.
Visit cb4k.org.
And we're back. And just briefly before we get to comic stuff, one touch upon next week's episode. So next week, I am going to be on location. I just want to share this with you guys here. So I'm going to be on location at the Highview Arts Center in front of the Mind's Eye Theater. That's a local community theater in Louisville, Kentucky. And they are doing Evil Dead the Musical. Basic performances are from October 13th through 15th. So you can go to mindseyetheater.com. It's all one word. And look up information for tickets and all that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm going to be joined by my buddy, Dave Mattingly. So it's going to be a different show. The usual 7 o'clock time. I'll try to see if I can go live there, like maybe in front of the theater so I'm not disturbing people inside. Do a very short show, maybe talk about some new books, whatever else is kind of going on. But after the show, probably looking about maybe like 10:30ish or so, something like that. We're going to come back and do a live episode here where I'm going to get to talk to the cast and possibly the director of Evil Dead the Musical about their experience. Talk Evil Dead a little bit. We'll talk about the show, all that sort of good stuff here. So you kind of get a little bit of a twofer next week here, but yeah, I'm excited to see the show here because I hear it's a scream, no pun intended. But yeah, Evil Dead as a musical, and it's still like gory and bloody and all that kind of good stuff. And so like, okay, yeah, I'm my interest is piqued. So yeah, old Dave Mattingly is going to be joining me on that one here. It says, "Hail to the Fanatic, baby." Yeah, that's right. And Dave actually gets to join me live. He's been on the show before, but it's been via StreamYard here. So yeah, it'll be nice to see you in person. And he's saying was earlier, but the new Joker is very grumpy. Yes, the new Joker is very grumpy. He is not having any fun recently. Sorry. Some of the kitties are being a little crazy in the background here. They're all watching now. All right, yeah. So again, so next week here, like I said, we'll be live at the Highview Arts Center for the Mind's Eye Theater production of Evil Dead the Musical. So yeah, go to mindseyetheater.com for more information, for tickets, all that good stuff here. But yeah, that's gonna be a hoot. All right, so sharing with you guys some spooky books here. Of course, I've got some independents and I've got some old school stuff here to share with you guys. So this is kind of current stuff that's out in stores right now that you can pick up at your local comic shop. And I highly recommend you guys, support your local comic store. If you don't know if you have a local comic store, you can Google it, or you can go to find a comic shop, all that sort of stuff like that. So if you don't know if you have a local store, there are many ways. Or of course you can, check out Clobbering Comics on Whatnot, and get on the chat there, and basically buy a book from me live. So I do auctions like 4 days a week. I do all that. So yeah, either way. Actually, I gotta share this comic with you all here from Dave Mattingly. It says, for Evil Dead the Musical, has a splatter zone in the first few rows, and they'll give you ponchos to catch all the fake blood. Yes! It's like going to see a Gallagher show back in the day. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's going to be fun. And I can bring my own poncho. I have rain gear and everything. All right. So here's some current stuff that might pique your interest for the spooky season here. I talked about this a few weeks back when it debuted, but from Distillery Comics, a brand new imprint, independent company. This is The Devil's Cut. Now, of course, if you're a bourbon fan, you know The Devil's Cut and the what's the other? The Angels. Not Angel's Envy, but Angel's Share. Angel's Share, that's what it is. So whenever basically you're putting bourbon into barrels and it's sitting in there, resting and doing all the things it does with inside barrels, you do lose some. Basically, some evaporates. That's the Angel's Share, and then some actually soaks into the wood, and you can't retrieve it out of the wood. That is the Devil's Cut. So basically, what is soaked into the wood, so to speak. Whether or not that actually has a reference to anything in this book, I don't think so. But this is an anthology series that is literally a who's who of basically, big stars in the comic book industry. Huge list of people here. Quick one-shot stories here. Usually they're maybe like 2 to 3 pages long, maybe some even 4. So they're very short and to the point. Some sci-fi. Lots of horror in here, but yeah, a couple of funny ones too. But yeah, again, just very worth checking out. Distillery's got another series out from superstar artist Jock, who also occasionally does some writing as well. That was called Gone, and that's a sci-fi series. And I think you get a little bit of a preview of that in here as well. So I got a twofer from Aftershock Comics. Of course, they're another independent company. They do all sorts of stuff here, but they do a good job with horror here. So this was a imprint from a couple of years ago, but they've reprinted for this year. This is After Dark, a horror anthology. This has Jim Starlin, Frank Thierry, Colin Bunn, Simon Kudaransky. Let's see who else here. Oh, DC Alonso. Yeah, I forgot he was in here. Dave Sharp. So fantastic group of people and creators in here. Again, this is a self-contained anthology, all horror series here. And there's some funny ones, but there's also just some really good, straight up, spooky stuff here. Again, yeah, great independent horror anthology stuff, and that's the independent books are fun in the ways that basically they're not safe for kids. You're going to get some definite adult content, whether it be gory, whether it be more psychological, whatever the case may be. You're in for a bloody good time if you're looking for that. Now when you go to the Marvel and DC stuff, if you're in their regular imprints, okay, it's probably going to be a little safe. Maybe, it might be slightly mature. They'll let you know on the cover. Of course, with DC having the Black Label imprint, that's definitely their adult stuff. So if you see the Black Label sign on the cover of a DC book, it's definitely not for kids. But yeah, but you also, again, you're going to be safe to know you're going to get some good adult content in there. Next up from Aftershock Comics, this was a great one-shot, came out a couple of weeks ago here, A Foulness in the Walls by Colin Bunn and Rodrigo Zayas. For Edgar Allan Poe fans, this would definitely hit all the spots for you guys. Basically, you've got a middle-aged, a younger middle-aged gentleman here who'd been taking care of his ill mother for a number of years. She just recently passed. Now he's looking for a new place to live, a new life, that sort of thing like that. Gets a new home, but immediately there's some problems because basically something stinks in the walls, literally a literal foulness in the walls. And so our young hero person here, protagonist, is trying to find ways to take care of that. And it gets pretty morbid pretty quickly. So, like I said, it's gorier than a Edgar Allan Poe story normally is, but definitely has a lot of inspiration for that. So, and a real estate agent's nightmare too is what this house is. Oh, hang on. I got a comment here from my junior fanatic, Seth Moore. Says he's late, but he is here. Good to see you, sir. And hey, I shared this on my page earlier this week here, but Seth and my buddy Bill Doris has a new podcast called Smokes and Road Beers. You can find that on Facebook and on the Rumble platform. So definitely give those guys a check. They basically talk about all sorts of topics. They get into geek stuff, wrestling, social and political topics sometimes, real world actual topics here. But yeah, good stuff. So yeah, if you like to see my buddy Seth here, you check out their podcast, Smokes and Road Beers. Anyway, let's talk some more spooky comics here. So these are still fairly current stuff, but now you can find these in collections if you don't want to do the hunt for individual issues here. But another great anthology series, The Silver Coin from Image Comics. This is by the brainchild Michael Walsh, who's kind of the main person behind each issue. But the fun thing is that the creative team switches. So while Walsh may be involved in each issue, you will sometimes have different writers, different artists pop in here. But this is basically sort of like a monkey's paw sort of thing, except this coin in question is cursed. And when people find it, some good things happen to them, but then also very quickly things take a turn for the worse. While each issue is sort of independent, as you go through the 12-issue series, you do start seeing some connections to things. So yeah, very clever series. Sometimes each issue takes place in a different time period. Kind of first issues in the 70s, then we're in the 80s, and then we jump to like the far future, and then so we're kind of all over the place. We even get into like colonial times, all sorts of things, but getting a lot of different. Sometimes getting some mythology for the coin itself, but then on occasion, like I said, we do get some connectivity to some of our stories, or maybe a reference to a past story or whatever else here. But again, the coin is the connection. But yeah, so highly recommend checking this series out if you like your kind of like, again, your good wish, bad wish sort of stuff there. And each issue has kind of a different flair to it. So some are gorier than others, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. From Boom Studios, I raved about this series when it was out last year. This is The Approach. It is a 5-issue series. It's actually next week the trade paperback comes out. So if you want to just get the collection, you can do that at your local comic book store. Or again, you can just find the 5-issue series. It shouldn't be too terribly difficult to find. I of course got these when they first came out, but yeah, we still have the back issues of this over at Clockwork Comics or your local comic shop, wherever you may be. So yeah, should be fairly easy to find. But The Approach is essentially the kind of, you take a little bit of The Thing and put it in a small Colorado airport where a large passenger plane has to land for an emergency because basically the weather's getting bad because it's getting snowy, and basically a bunch of people are on their way to the beach and they get stuck in Colorado in the mountains, whatever else. So as everybody is deplaning, going into this very small airport that is really not equipped to handle this many people. They've got very scant resources. You've got 2 security officers and a maintenance staff of 4, and that's about it. Anywho, so as everybody's deplaning, a small single-engine plane lands, and the lone passenger inside, you can immediately tell something's not right with him. And slowly but surely, he starts changing, and we definitely get the large monster going after a small group of people that are clearly not equipped to handle this sort of thing. So the ragtag group of maintenance and security people band together to defend the passengers and flight crew from this creature. And it is a lot of fun. If you like your monster stuff and, people getting chased and eaten, whatever else, by large, disgusting monsters, then yeah, this is the series for you. Issue 4 was my favorite because that was the one where we were kind of like, you keep building and building, and the issue 4 gets to the point where like, okay, we're confronting this monster. We're going to have the big fight. And then basically, like a whole bunch of people get eaten. So just absolute fun. I couldn't enjoy a horror series more than I did here. Jeremy Hahn, I know, is the writer on this one. I'm not familiar with the writing staff or the art staff on here, Hurley, Hervase, and Caballero. But yeah, just again, beautiful book. Absolutely loved it. Another independent one from last year. Again, raved about this series here from Dark Horse Comics, Night of the Ghoul. This has a little bit of similarity to the Midnight Show that I talked about earlier in the episode here. This is basically supposedly a lost film of the 1940s that was, thought to be not finished, but then ended up getting finished, and a film historian is trying to find information, try to find the film itself, finds the director in a rest home, and kind of has the conversation with him about the history of the film, how he can find it, whatever else. And as we find from the filmmaker that there is a curse and a conspiracy around the film to prevent this thing from getting released, because this isn't a movie about a ghoul. This is a movie warning us about the ghoul. And apparently the ghoul was the ultimate monster when it comes to all monster lore. All myths and legends of other monsters like, Dracula and werewolf and zombies, wherever else, all apparently come from the ghoul. This is a real thing, and the director was trying to warn us about these evils in the world, and apparently everyone has been trying to stop him for a very long time. It's a 3-issue series done by Scott Snyder with art by the great Francesco Francavilla. If you're a Riverdale fan, of course, he did the Riverdale comics, the Jughead the Hunger, Afterlife with Archie, kind of taking the Archie comics into a more darker adult realm. So his art is very kind of old school horror, but just absolutely gorgeous. So you get basically excerpts from the film itself, and then you get kind of the real life modern day stuff that's going on and how those worlds are clashing. So and like I said, it's a 3-issue series. It has been collected into a trade paperback, so you can pick that up if you want. And of course, the other good news is that Warner Brothers picked this up for an option to be made into a film pretty much after the first issue is released. So fingers crossed that's still going to happen. But yeah, I can't wait. Now, some old school horror here. These are literal personal favorites of mine. This is stuff that basically I've held on to for years that really, shaped as a great horror fan here. But before we get into that, definitely want to get into some comments here. Seth Moore popped up, says that Marvel did a great adaptation of Stephen King's The Stand. Yeah, actually, Marvel did a whole bunch of Stephen King stuff. They did like a lot of the Dark Tower mythology stuff. They did The Stand. I did something else. But they definitely did The Stand and a lot of the Dark Tower stuff. Richard Eisenoff did most of the art for both those series. Richard does some, if you like your old school horror art from like 60s and 70s era kind of stuff, Richard Eisenoff has that touch. Just absolutely gorgeous stuff here. But yeah, Seth's on point with that. The Marvel Stephen King stuff is really good. That was early 2000s, I think. So a lot of stuff you can find easier in trade paperbacks than you actually find the individual issues. But if you want to go on the hunt, I'm always encouraging us to do that. Anywho, so old school stuff. Definitely, we got to share the thing that really kind of started it all for me here. Tomb of Dracula, #1. This was really the entry to Marvel horror proper here because you've got, of course, Dracula was introduced. You've got characters like Blade that was introduced, Hannibal King, Frank Drake, Rachel Van Helsing, tons of other characters in here. Basically, the different vampire hunters and various other ne'er-do-wells. But yeah, so the 70s, you saw like a lot of stuff like Werewolf by Night and Ghost Rider and Man Thing, whatever else. There's, they had a few other anthology books here, but definitely Tomb of Dracula was the leader and all that. Gene Colan, Marv Wolfman, just absolutely amazing stuff here. After they wrapped up the original Tomb of Dracula, they went over to DC and created a series called Night Force, which was very similar to Tomb of Dracula. It didn't involve vampires, it was more like magic and mysticism sort of thing like that, but still had some very interesting characters, a ragtag group of people that were kind of the good fighters, so to speak, like that. It didn't last very long. I think it only ran 12 issues in the original series. I will say the first 5 issues are fantastic. If you can find those, or you can find a collection of them, I highly recommend picking those up. After the first 5 issues, the series kind of takes a different turn, and it kind of falls apart. That's kind of probably why I got canceled. But those first 5, killer. So Night Force, if you ever find that out, check those out. Tomb of Dracula, on the other hand, these are in many collections and omnibuses, whatever else. Or if you want to go out and try to find the original issues, good luck. Some of them are pricey, especially when you get the Tomb of Dracula 10. That is my white wolf, my white whale, because that is the first appearance of Blade. If you want to find really nice copies, kind of similar to this, it's going to be a couple $1,000s probably because Blade's never gone out of popularity. So that's always a book that's going to be expensive, unfortunately for me. So I have a reprint, but it's not quite the same thing. I want the real thing. But other than that, I've got the rest of the Tomb of Dracula series and all the annuals and giant sizes and all that sort of stuff like that. So yeah, definitely. It's a favorite series of mine. And so anything that kind of spun out of the Tomb of Dracula, or anytime they try to come back with a series, which they've done multiple times, I'm there for it every time. Seth chiming in saying Chuma Dracula is classic literature. Gene Collon's art was unmatched. Absolutely. Yeah, just great gothic horror stuff. The 90s, like I said earlier, kind of saw an explosion at a return to the horror imprint here. And that started with this guy right here. Good old Ghost Rider #1 from 1991. Yeah. Let's see, was that 91? Oh, sorry, 1990. Sorry, 1990, yes. And we saw several issues of this come out. And then eventually we start getting other characters in the Marvel horror universe involved and crossing over. And then we have the Midnight Suns, or the rise of the Midnight Suns. And part of that was definitely Night Stalkers, another favorite of mine, bringing back Blade, Hannibal King, and Frank Drake, all from the Tomb of Dracula series, crossing over into the Marvel universe here. Of course, we also had other titles like Morbius, which basically was a Spider-Man character that now incorporated in the Marvel horror stuff. We also had Darkhold, which basically was literally about the kind of the Marvel Book of the Dead, the Book of the Damned, that sort of thing like that. You know it from the WandaVision series, the Doctor Strange films, that sort of thing like that. So, but yeah, we saw like a big crossover of all these Marvel horror guys in the 90s. And so for a number of years, Howard Mackey, who was kind of the brainchild behind all this, had some fantastic superhero horror sort of stuff like that. Night Stalkers ran for several issues. Then Blade had a spin-off series. Johnny Blaze had the Spirits of Vengeance series. Then he had a couple spin-off series as well. Werewolf by Night eventually got incorporated back into that. So again, the 90s were a great time for horror for Marvel fans. And yeah, I was there for all of it. But lastly, one volume I definitely want to share with you guys, one I've had for a long time here. But Marvel, on the other, would occasionally dip into classic literature and classic horror stuff. And they've done this on multiple occasions here. But this was, let's see, when did this one come out here before I show you? This came out, oh, wow, okay. So this came out in 2004, but this is a hardbound copy of Marvel's adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, done by Roy Thomas, who writes the adaptation, art by Dick Giordano, who, of course, DC fans know him well as a great artistic legend here. But this is the beautiful artwork in the book here. It's all black and white, but yes, it is the entirety of Dracula. This was a 4-issue series that Marvel did, initially going back into, let's see here, what's it here? Well, it said it came out in 2005. I think it was earlier than that. I think it was like the late 70s when this initially came out. But yes, released in a magazine format called Stoker's Dracula. It was, like I said, 4 issues. But this has been collected multiple times here. But this hardback, I absolutely loved it. Of course, get the actual book itself. See, it's the black felt there with shiny stuff there. So, yeah, absolutely beautiful. I love the dust jacket as well. Of course, you get some great red and black art in there. So, yeah, love it, love it, love it. Of course, you gotta love the nice little little bookmarker as well. But yeah, I've had this for a number of years here, but always a favorite volume here. So, but yeah, Marvel's adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, beautiful, beautiful stuff here. Got a few more here. Oh, here we are. Seth says his favorite horror comic of all time, From Hell, tied with 30 Days of Night. Ooh, very good. Very, very good. I love those. Yeah. From Hell is Alan Moore's telling of the Jack the Ripper storyline, kind of with his own theories based on a few other literary theories of the identity of the Ripper himself. This, of course, was adapted into a movie starring Johnny Depp and Heather, can't remember her last name, girl from Boogie Nights, and but yeah, a very good adaptation of the film or of the book. But yeah, From Hell. Can't remember who originally. I think it was an independent publisher, but usually you can find the volumes pretty easy at local comic shops, or they can obviously order it for you because it is still in print. But yeah, highly recommend checking that out. And then, of course, 30 Days of Night. That was Ben Templesmith and Steve Niles. Ben Templesmith, great artist. Steve Niles, fantastic horror writer. Of course, the original 30 Days of Night has been adapted into a movie. I recommend reading the book too, because the movie kind of only adapted about half the book. You get all the main action of the vampires coming to Barrow, Alaska, and saying, hey, there's no sun for 30 days, and so it's like smorgasbord time. And there you go. But there was also a lot of other interaction within the vampire community, a reason why those particular vampires were going to Barrow, Alaska, and maybe some other repercussions within the vampire community and repercussions for what they did in Barrow, also included in the book as well. And then, of course, there were many other sequels and spin-offs furthering the story of 30 Days of Night. So, yeah, good call, Seth. I highly recommend you guys checking those out, especially if you like your vampire stuff. Yeah, 30 Days of Night is awesome. From Hell, also very, very good here. But yeah, From Hell definitely has some horrific moments, but it's also a good kind of a whodunit police procedural conspiracy theory kind of story too. So not just the spooky stuff is in that one. So yeah, very, very good. Good comments, guys. So yeah, appreciate everybody sharing your favorites with me, and especially if you don't get to tune in live, definitely share your comments later on as well. And we'll address those at a later time, of course. But yeah, definitely to reiterate, for next week, we're going to be here doing 2 shows. We're going to do a short one at 7, hopefully before we get to the production of Evil Dead the Musical, which is at the Highview Arts Center, put on by Mind's Eye Theater Company. Like I say, a local community theater production in Louisville, Kentucky. Very talented people. They picked some awesome shows. They did Bat Boy the Musical a couple of weeks ago. And so to round out to the spooky season, they're doing Evil Dead the Musical from October 13th through the 15th. So they have multiple showings. So get your tickets at mindseyetheater.com. But yeah, so next week we're going to get to, you guys won't get to see the play. Maybe, I don't know. But maybe we'll chime in at the end or show you a little bit of the beginnings. I don't know. We'll see what we can do. But we will get to talk to the cast and crew of the show afterwards. So definitely stay tuned for a later edition of Fanatic Forum as we get to do that. And of course, I get to hang out with my buddy Dave Mattingly, and that's a lot of fun as well. So you guys have yourselves a great weekend. If you haven't caught up on Ahsoka, I highly recommend you guys checking that out. It's awesome. And Loki, season 2, the first episode, off to a great start. So, and there is a post-credit scene, so if you guys didn't get to check that out, stay tuned for a post-credit scene as well. So, and of course, let's see, in theaters, I know you got a couple of movies that are out, but definitely the one I got to check out is The Creator. I've heard very, very good things about that. So, I'm down. It's a awesome sci-fi movie done by was it Gareth Edwards who did Rogue One? Yeah, so I'm there because Rogue One was amazing. So, and of course, it stars John David Washington, Denzel's kid, and a fantastic actor. So I'm excited to see that movie. I've heard mixed reviews on The Exorcist, the new sequel, requel, whatever they're calling it. I'm curious, but we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, so I want to know what you guys are doing. Lots of other good stuff. And of course, we are almost towards the end of spooky season, but halfway through. So lots of other events and other fun things to do in your community. So I want to hear about it. Spread the word if you can. I love to promote that sort of thing. But yeah, so thank you guys for tuning into the Fanatic Forum. Share with your friends and family and whatnot, and bring them on the table here because all geeks are welcome. You guys have yourselves a good one, and I will see you next time. Take care.